They were a ragtag band of heroes from all corners of the Marvel Universe. They were a new generation of heroes who starred in one of the best books of the 90s called The New Warriors. We've seen them rise up from relative obscurity. We've seen them take on the foes that would give older heroes, such as the Avengers, a run for their money. We've seen them tackle personal issues that grounded the group in reality. We now know what made this group so memorable in the eyes of everyone who has read their 1990 to 1996 run, thanks to the fantastic writing by Fabian Nicieza and others. Two questions still remain. Where are these new warriors now? What has happened to them since the end of the first volume? It's time to find out. Somehow the elephant in the room has figured out how to use Vegas. I'm doomed, aren't I? Quiet, I'm trying to be funny. We have reached the final lap in my discussion about the New Warriors. It's been a long time coming, and it's been fun looking back at the series that really sparked my imagination as a kid. Justice, Firestar, Speedball, Nova, and Namorita are among my favorite Marvel characters of all time. Night Thrasher? Not so much. Dude's got issues. Even the teammates I didn't talk about that much, like Turbo, Rage, and Darkhawk, were fun rereading. To me, they were the future of the Marvel Universe. Future Avengers who could stand side by side with Earth's mightiest should the need ever arise. And despite being written like teenagers with powers going through their lives, they were written like they could one day actually achieve that goal. In that regard, they were very much like DC's Teen Titans. When I reread the comics letter pages, I saw people actively comparing the Teen Titans with the New Warriors. Apparently it was quite the debate back then. Honestly, there isn't really much of a comparison. The Titans were largely sidekicks of heroes fighting injustice, and started off very big with adventures that had them deal with the likes of Deathstroke and even Trigon, the demonic ruler of another dimension. The New Warriors, in contrast, started small. In the last couple videos, we saw them go from taking on street thugs to saving all of reality, thwarting alien invasions, and never stopping no matter how often their roster changed. Both teams had their good and bad issues, and had writers that really cared about the characters and created stories that stood the test of time. If it didn't, I wouldn't be here talking about them now, would I? The New Warriors was one of the most well-written comics of the 90s because of how it handled heroics and personal crises. It was unfortunately cancelled due to many factors like Marvel's bankruptcy, and even then, that didn't kill the Warriors off for good. Now that the main series is over, it's time to look at what happened to the team since then. Around the time the first volume was cancelled, Marvel started the event known as Onslaught, a story where the fears and anger built up in Professor Charles Xavier and Magneto merged to form a psychic being known as Onslaught. Let this be a lesson for you kids. Don't bottle up all your anger and frustration, or else you'll turn into a green rage monster. Or a purple and red one. Once Onslaught was over and done, and Earth's mightiest had enough of being drawn by image artists, the heroes returned, and it was glorious. The Avengers post-Heroes Reborn had the amazing team of writer Kurt Busiek and artist George Perez behind it, and they created the defining Avengers roster for the rest of the 90s. By defining, I mean Captain America, Thor, Iron Man, and pretty much anyone else was available. As long as you had those three members, it doesn't really matter who's on your Avengers team. Joining Cap, Thor, and Iron Man this time were the likes of Hawkeye, Wasp, Vision, Giant Man, Justice, Firestar, Scarlet... Wait, did I say Justice and Firestar? Of the New Warriors? Yep, They moved on up to Avengers status and helped the team tackle deadly foes such as Morgan Le Fay, Ultron, and even a new version of the Masters of Evil since the others were Thunderbolts at the time. Vance, of course, was eager and proud to be an Avenger. Remember we saw how he wanted to join back in the series' first issue? He admittedly was a bit fanboyish, and it was a stark contrast to what Firestar had been going through. In the last vid, I said she was worried about her powers giving her cancer. It turned out she was right, and Hank Pym devised a special suit that would fix the damage caused by her own radiation-based powers, and allow her normal immunity to reassert itself. Kinda makes you think, right? Maybe she should have gone to him when this mess started. Just saying, Red, he could have saved you a lot of trouble. Justice and Firestar enjoyed their tenure as members of the Avengers, and while they didn't end up getting married, the two remained good friends. That isn't to say the Warriors themselves didn't do anything before and after Vance and Angel left. New heroes who were also superstars in the early 90s also joined off-panel. They were Slapstick, who was a youth that could turn into a living cartoon character. I swear I can't make any of this up. And there was Ultra Girl, a member of the alien race known as the Kree, who had superhuman strength. They were a solid group until they were disbanded. As far as the others go, they formed a new group of warriors that led to the short-lived second volume. Speedball was a bit annoyed that his friends had graduated to the Avengers, and several of the other warriors, such as Rage and Night Thrasher, kind of had their fill of being heroes for the time being. Wanting a group to call his own, Robbie assembled a team consisting of former warriors Nova, Turbo, and Namorita, who, for some reason or another, returned to having white skin. It was because of her clone nature, I think. Either that or Marvel ran out of light blue ink. Joining the three originals were an African-American named Trey, who went by the name Aegeus, and a mutant with bioelectricity named Chris. No, that's not me. Not me at all. There are other Chris's in the world, you know. Chris went by the name of Bolt, and unfortunately he was one of the many mutants in the 90s who were suffering from the legacy virus, a virus that targeted only mutants and was pretty much the AIDS allegory in the mutant community. Tough break because I really liked that character. The series lasted 10 issues, and it ended with Chris coming clean about having the virus that plagued mutant kind, and Night Thrasher saying that he would do what he could to find a cure. Thankfully, Beast of the X-Men beat him to it, and in the end Colossus sacrificed himself to end the threat of the legacy virus, leaving Thrash doing Jack and Squat, respectively. The new group of warriors did okay for themselves for a while. That was until writers and Night Thrasher decided it would be a great idea to make their adventures into a kind of reality show. It's coming in a couple minutes. Keep your pointy helmet on. In 2005, Marvel created a reality show-themed comic for the Warriors starring Thrash, Speedball, Nita, who was now blue for some reason, and Nova from the original book, and two new characters called Debris and Microbe. They basically roamed around the country looking for supervillains to fight, and got involved in some hijinks. I can't see anything wrong going with this type of reality show starring superheroes who tape themselves fighting bad guys. Good thing Nova bailed when he was called back into space by the Nova Corps. Or maybe not. I suppose now I should talk about the Civil War and how the new warriors were involved. My dearest Mary Jane, the war hasn't gone well, I'm afraid. I know I said I'd protect you and Aunt May after revealing my identity, so don't go making deals with any devils. Tony Stark's got me wearing a hideous red and yellow armor that just screams nepotism, plain and simple. The man just loves red and yellow. I swear, Reed isn't quite all there either, since he and Stark started up some prison in another dimension. I'm starting to see why Captain America is against Tony. He's been ranting about changing how we heroes do things, and created insane rules to live by. My heart is torn, MJ. Do I stay and be Tony's personal whipping boy, or do I fight side by side with Cap? Cap has been fighting for our freedom to be heroes and to do what's right. We're supposed to be heroes, not government flunkies. I don't know what to do. I can only think of you and those poor new warriors who lost their lives at the start of the war. Hoping to see you soon. Peter Parker. I think I skipped ahead and spoiled something. Whoops. The sad truth is that, yes, the New Warriors did start off the Civil War. At first there was a bit of rumbling between the government and Tony Stark, who was talking to them about maybe requiring people with powers to register with them in order to take responsibility for their actions. The legislation got a kick in the Make It So column when the Warriors went to Stamford, Connecticut to film yet another reality show episode. The villain known as Nitro was outside of a schoolyard tending to his garden. He had been overpowered with a mutant growth hormone, and the Warriors felt that they could take him and a few other C-list baddies. Nita shoved Nitro into the side of a bus, and he went boom, killing hundreds of people, including kids. The only one to survive the blast was Speedball, thanks to his kinetic energy field, and from that point on, he had some serious survivor's guilt. He donned a new spiky suit of armor that actually hurt him when he wore it, called himself Penance, and joined up with Norman Osborn's government-sanctioned band of Thunderbolts, who were supposed to bring in superpowered people. Okay, let me see if I get this right. The government is entrusting a man who used to run around dressed in a goblin costume with the protection of the United States and is in control of the agent of S.H.I.E.L.D. He was also the arch nemesis of the Amazing Spider-Man and caused him all kinds of grief. What writer thought this was a good idea? Don't answer that. With the Warriors' name being Mud, a new volume starring the team was formed in the wake of the war. Only this time, one character was from the old volume. His name was Danielle, Dwayne's half-brother. I briefly talked about this guy. He assembled a team of depowered mutants such as Jubilee, who lost their powers at the end of House of M. The book lasted 20 or so issues, and often butted heads with Vance and his team of warriors from the Avengers Initiative series. Vance had gotten part of the band back together, with Rage, Ultra Girl, and Slapstick returning for a brief period of time. In fact, they were called into action again. Remember Carlton, the little weasel who blackmailed his way into the Warriors team in the 90s? Yeah, he showed up again, and he was even more of a weasel. It seemed that he was the webmaster of a site dedicated to tarnishing the team's good name. The Warriors called on She-Hulk to help find the webmaster of DestroyAllWarriors.com, since he was giving out the names and addresses of all the surviving members of the team, just like the Poison Memories did. He was stopped and the Warriors went their separate ways again. Post-Civil War New Warriors lore should really be seen through the eyes of Nova. Check this out. After 2009's Nova number 1, Rich returned to Earth after the Annihilation War to see what his friends had been up to, only to find that Thrasher named Marita had died. Vance was a S.H.I.E.L.D. operative, Firestar retired, and everyone else was in hiding. Rich of course butted heads with Iron Man, and discussed the whole Civil War mess. He talked with Vance, and he thought about joining up with the registered heroes to help clear the name of the New Warriors, who had been branded as murderers, when the villainous Nitro was the one who caused the explosion. Sorry, little residual anger there. Moving on. Rich was all set to join when he encountered his former teammate, Robbie. The shock of seeing Robbie in a spiky suit rocked Rich to his core as he remembered him to be a carefree comic relief kind of guy. Shocked, Rich left Earth and told his friend to not let the government and the Thunderbolts change him to something he isn't. Eventually, Rich did return and talked to Vance and Angel about the old days and the new Nova Corps before having an adventure with Darkhawk, and eventually he disappeared after becoming an Avenger and sacrificing himself to save all of reality. Robbie eventually dropped the spiky gear and called himself Speedball once more when he and Vance were asked to join Hank Pym's new school for teaching kids how to use their powers. This was Avengers Academy, and was a very good read from start to finish. The former warriors related their tales of daring do, and Robbie started to feel like himself again, and even stopped cutting himself, too. Near the end, he and Vance decided to hit the road together to stop baddies, only this time without a camera crew and a lame reality show. Man, this is a romance movie. I kid. There's nothing wrong with two guys hitting the road together and busting punks across the country, right? Right. Firestar, in the meantime, had her own problems. Despite everything that Hank Pym did for her in the late 90s with that power regulation suit, the fiery ginger unfortunately developed breast cancer. She thought by retiring she would have been spared any ill effects. She was wrong, and eventually she was treated and the cancer was put into remission. All this occurred when she became a member of the Young Allies, a group of young heroes looking to make a name for themselves. She remained friends with Vance and the other warriors. They just aren't a group anymore. Sadly, as of this video, they've all gone their separate ways. It's nice that the writers remember them and toss them in when they can, of course. I've just always wanted more than just a small taste of Warriors' goodness. You might say I'm a bit annoyed at where the Warriors are these days. You might be right, and wrong at the same time. I admit it. The Warriors had been treated poorly since the dawn of the 2000s. There's no disputing it. For a while I thought the creators were bringing the characters back just to mess with them. They were the catalyst for the Civil War, like I said, and though creators said in interviews that they used the Warriors to start the war because they assumed people forgot about them or didn't like them. I'd be lying if I said I didn't feel the same way. Let's look at it a different way. Because of the events of the Civil War, Speedball had become a force to be reckoned with. True, he was an emotional wreck, and I'm not condoning the event at all. His character grew, and over time so did the others. Many of them joined the Avengers, and though Namorita and Night Thrasher died in the opening shot of the Civil War, Nita did return, albeit as a temporal displaced version of herself from the past who was still in love with Rich. Comics, making little sense since the early 20th century. In all seriousness, I'm glad the Warriors have at least been used, and are continuing to be used to this day. I think it would have been far too easy for Marvel to just sweep them under the rug and forget about them after their book was first cancelled. Marvel has shown that they care about the Warriors despite what has happened to them. Yes, they've gone through the ringer, but is it any different from the stuff that they went through in the past? Remember when I said the team went through crisis after crisis? I don't think this is any different. The characters grew even more when dealing with more crises. Firestar won her battle against cancer. Rich sacrificed himself to save the universe. Speedball became more than what he was, despite the emotional breakdown. Justice became an Avenger like he did since way back in 1990. Every one of the surviving original Warriors has been written with care and respect since the Civil War event. And that's saying something when you consider what has happened to other characters. Me? Bitter? No. The team was created as underdogs, and to this day their legacy endures as characters we thought were gone return to fight the good fight anew. Have some decisions regarding the characters been met with skepticism? Sure. In the end, I'm glad they're still around, and appreciated by fans old and new alike. They are special characters to me, because I grew up with them, and it would be nice if there was a new series of Warriors out there to inspire another generation of kids to read comics and really care about the characters. Writers would do well to strike while the iron's hot. There's a market for these young heroes to be used, and appreciated by fans all over the world. I know we have Young Avengers and other books that did what the New Warriors have done. It's the New Warriors that carried on the tradition of teenage heroes with attitude coming out on their own and striving to be a voice of a new generation. The Warriors could easily do that again and be the guiding force behind the teen heroes of today who are now where they were many years ago. At this point, I think we should take what we can get. In the meantime, I'm going to enjoy the stories of the past for what they were, and look to the future for hope that someday the characters we love return to grace the pages of the comic book. Don't call it a comeback. I'm Steve Farrar, thanks for watching Comic Showcase, and I'll see you in the funny pages.